I'm going to give you two players, and I want you to pick which player you think is better. You ready? Here we go. Player A is a career 311, 355, 402 hitter, good for a 757 OPS. He averages only 7 home runs a year. He walks about 40 times a year as well. Player B is a career 245, 338, 368 hitter with a 707 OPS. He averages 12 home runs a year while walking 77 times a year. I'm going to put both those on the screen now. I want you guys to decide which player you think is better. I'll give you a sec. Hold on. And while I'm giving you a sec, you should probably use our link down below to pick up one of these cool Mariners jackets available for a limited time for half off with our Fanatic affiliate link. Be sure to do that down below. Thanks. Now, player A is Ichiro Suzuki. His WRC plus throughout his career was 104. Player B is JP Crawford, current Mariners shortstop. His WRC plus throughout his career is also 104. Both players are considered equal by weighted runs created plus. Thoroughly confused? Let me help you out. A lot of people misunderstand advanced statistics, and WRC plus is one of those things. For Joe and I over here on the channel, we use WRC plus or OPS plus, which is just what Baseball Reference uses. WRC plus is more so a Fangraphs thing. They're usually about the same, a little bit different, but we'll focus on WRC plus in this one here. WRC plus is kind of simple to explain, but hard to understand. So let me give you the definition from MLB.com, and then we'll kind of break it down into hopefully something a little bit easier. MLB.com says WRC Plus takes the statistic runs created and adjusts that number to account for important external factors, like ballpark or era. It's adjusted, so a WRC Plus of 100 is league average, and 150 would be 50% above league average. For example, a player who plays his home games at hitter-friendly Coors Field will have a lower WRC plus than a player who posts identical stats at pitcher-friendly Oakland Coliseum. That much is pretty easy to understand, right? A player with a WRC plus of 105 is 5% better than a league average player. A player with a WRC plus of 95 is 5% worse. Pretty easy to understand, right? With 100 being the baseline. So why is Ichiro Suzuki rated at 104, only 4% better than a league average player? Before we talk about the formula to calculate WRC plus, let's learn about what runs created is, because WRC plus is weighted runs created plus. Weighted meaning that it is based on park factors and era, whereas runs created, not so much. It's just based on very similar statistics. Let's go ahead and check it out. Runs created is defined by MLB.com as it estimates a player's offensive contribution in terms of total runs. It combines a player's ability to get on base with his ability to hit for extra bases. Then it divides those two by the player's total opportunities. For example, in 631 opportunities, at-bats plus walks, player A has 377 total bases in 2014, with 66 walks and 195 hits. By this formula, a very basic version of the formula, which doesn't include base running, double plays, etc., player A created 156 runs in the 2014 season. The formula for that is, as according to this, total bases times hits plus walks divided by at-bats plus walks. That's the formula. Am I ever going to use it? No. I'm just going to see what Baseball Reference says the player's runs created are. Good? Good. In the end, though, the best way to understand it is the more runs created by a player, the better the player is. So what does that mean for Ichiro? Because you would assume that he was putting together quite a few runs throughout his time in the MLB. Let's look at the formula for WRC plus really quick and just be confused. Here's the formula. Here you go. That do anything for you? Know what that meant? No? Me neither. I don't think it's important. Now, we're making this video because there are a lot of different fans and walks of life that are fans of the Mariners and fans of baseball. And we've gotten plenty of questions throughout the years of, what does this stat mean? What does WRC plus mean? And why is it good for evaluating a player? We made one for WAR a few years back before this channel even started, when I was trying to start a channel called Base Knock Analytics. And that video is one of our most viewed videos of all time. It continues to get views today. And naturally, that just made us want to start a little series here, explaining to you guys what these stats mean. Because frankly, Joe and I aren't mathematicians. Like, I don't know what the hell that formula was for weighted runs created plus, and I could not care less to figure it out. But what I can tell you is that 100 is league average, 104, which is Ichiro, is 4% above league average. Why? Because WRC plus is a statistic that really hates singles. Think about the prototypical like singles merchants in baseball right now. You think of Luis Arraez, right? Luis Arraez is a guy who has a lot of base hits a lot of singles, doesn't hit for a whole lot of power. His career WRC plus is 120. Does that mean that he's a better hitter than Ichiro? No, he has about the same walk rate as Ichiro, a even lower strikeout rate than Ichiro had. But he's also a guy who, has hit for a little bit of power here and there. 10 home runs in 2023 down in Miami. Not to say that Ichiro didn't have that kind of power. It's not something he really showed on display. The other thing is Ichiro stole a lot of bases, whereas Luis Arraez didn't. Yet Arraez still has the higher WRC+. You think about that in the ballpark in which Luis Arraez played it in 2023, which was in Miami, where he had a 130 WRC+. Obviously, Miami is a pitcher's haven, so why in the world is Luis Arraez have a 130 WRC+, whereas Ichiro, who also played in a pitcher's haven in T-Mobile Park, or Safeco Field at the time, why does he have a 104? So obviously the ballpark statistic isn't part of it. However, the era is. Think about the kind of players that were in the game in 2001. Let's just take a look at the stats leaders in 01 really quick to really show why Ichiro Suzuki is valued so low in terms of his WRC+. In his rookie year of 2001, Ichiro Suzuki led the league in at-bats and plate appearances. And then you look around the rest of the league here. Hold on. There's one name that stands out above the rest. Bonds. Offensive WAR 12.4. Slugging percentage 863. On base 515. Yeah, Barry Bonds was in the major leagues at this time, and he was one of the best players we have ever seen. Now keep in mind, Ichiro led the league with 242 hits in 2001. Barry Bonds, that's the year he hit 73, by the way. But in his rookie year, Ichiro, of course, MVP, Rookie of the Year, etc., 242 hits. But what was running rampant in baseball at the time? Steroids. There was a lot of power in the game back in the early 2000s. You think of Bonds, you think of Sosa, you think of McGuire, Canseco, etc. All those guys were some of the best players in baseball. Obviously, A-Rod is another big one there. For Ichiro, he kind of broke the mold a little bit. He was a guy who was a little slap hitter, didn't hit for a whole lot of power. He was a speed, great defense, slap hitter combo, whereas what was honestly really popular in baseball was the long ball at the time. Again, the record for the most home runs in a single season was set that year at 73. Let me just look at the top 5 here. Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs. Sammy Sosa hit 64. Luis Gonzalez hit 57. A-Rod hit 52. And Jim Thome was tied with Todd Helton and Shawn Green with 49 home runs. Nowadays, we don't see guys hitting 50-plus home runs. Yeah, steroid era was huge at that time, and that is the type of era that Ichiro was playing in, where his brand of baseball, it wasn't the sexy kind. It wasn't the kind that made him look like the best player on the field, even though a lot of times he was. Ichiro Suzuki in 2001, yeah, he, of course, won the MVP that year. He put up a 124 WRC+. Barry Bonds in 2001 put up a 235, meaning he was 135% better than a league average player. 235, probably the highest WRC plus season in the history of baseball. So now we have to go back to the original runs created formula now that we understand that a little bit better. Runs created equals hits plus walks times total bases. Okay, so at the very top here, hits plus walks. So we go back to look at Barry Bonds in 2001. He had 156 hits. He also walked 177 times, which puts that number above those walks plus hits, puts it above 300. For Ichiro, he had 242 hits, but he also only walked 30 times. Ichiro did not walk that often, putting it at about 272 right there, so obviously lower than Bonds. So that's the on-base factor. So for Ichiro, it was 272, then times his total bases. In 2001, that was 316. For Bonds in 2001, yeah, that was 411. I'm done doing math. I don't want to do any more math. You guys don't want to hear any more math. It's boring. What is the big change between Bonds and Ichiro in those two seasons? It's walks and it's hitting for power with 1 runs created plus. While runs created doesn't necessarily take into account power, it does take into account total bases. Obviously, with each home run you hit, you get 4 total bases just from that. So because of that, Barry Bonds is obviously going to be the better guy there. So why does J.P. Crawford and Ichiro Suzuki, why do they both have the same career WRC+? Obviously, JP is the worst hitter. Ichiro hit over 300, JP's a career 238 or whatever it was hitter. And the big difference between the two is their walks. We're going to look at JP's 2022 season because that's the closest thing to Ichiro with a 105 WRC plus in that season. His 68 walks plus his 126 hits made a big difference there. Now again, like I said, OPS plus is a little bit different than WRC plus. It's calculated a little differently. So his OPS plus that year was 100. Still the same thing remains where if you're 105 would be 5% better. Same thing there. So again, JP Crawford walked 68 times in 2022. Now that's not the highest of his career. The next year would actually be the highest of his career at 9.4, where he was a 5-win player and had a WRC plus of 136 in 2023, but he had 68 walks in 2022. That is the high watermark for Ichiro. He walked 68 times in 2002, the most of his career. So while Ichiro, of course, got more hits than J.P. Crawford makes up for it in other ways. He averages more home runs than Ichiro, so the total bases mark. He also does walk more. He gets on base more. That's not to say that J.P. Crawford is a better player, because obviously he is not. Again, WRC Plus only takes into account offensive statistics, although both guys are pretty good defensively. So that begs the question, is WRC Plus a good stat? And I can totally understand why people would say no. I think it's a very difficult stat for certain players. Ichiro, Luis Ariz, Nico Horner, for example, is a guy we talked about a lot this offseason. Guys like that who don't hit for a whole lot of power, but do get a lot of hits, maybe don't walk all that much, but also don't strike out that much. They're kind of singles merchants, and WRC Plus, in my opinion, is just not the right stat for them. There are a million different stats you can talk about in baseball, but using a WRC Plus or OPS Plus for those guys specifically, it just does not work, in my opinion. However, I still do think that WRC Plus is a very important statistic. I do, however, believe that it needs some tweaking. It's a stat that maybe it can't be the end-all be-all. Because again, I told you at the start, we looked at two different players where one player was very clearly better than the other in terms of, basically all of their statistics except for maybe the batting average throughout their career. And yet, both players had the same WRC plus. So yeah, there's definitely some downfalls to WRC plus, but let me know in the comments down below if this video helped you at all. I really hope that it did help explain it. Hopefully you're not just more confused. In the end, the thing you need to know is WRC plus. If it's higher than 100, it's good. Lower than 100 is bad. That's pretty much it. The higher it is over 100, the better the player was. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.